Hey guys, it is me, Nico, here again on the main channel to bring you another prologue to a new segment to the Misery Productions channel. And today, co-hosting today's episode with me, I have James Universe through via Skype. Say hi, James.
Very good.
Yeah. Connection may be a little bit laggy, so I apologize for that. But anyways, guys, I have a brand new segment for you guys. This is a segment I've been wanting to air off for about a couple of months now. And what this segment is basically going to be about is giving you guys tips on how to do certain MOCs with a certain scenery. And James will be helping me pretty much give out input on how you want to go about making the scenery look for a desert MOC, and I'll be going over the battle texture. By that I mean, if you want to pretty much do a battle scene in the desert, I'll give you guys input on how you guys want to go about that, and James will give you a little bit more input on how you want to present the desert layout as far as landscape. So for our first episode, we have my old Jaguada Capture the Flag MOC, and today's episode, as I stated earlier, is going to be on desert scenery, desert MOCs. So as you can see here, guys, my MOC is not entirely desert. I didn't want to make it all desert originally, so I added a little bit more of the rocky sort of muddyish mud brown texture on the one side of the MOC, and then the rest of it is all desert. I have pretty much a river isolating the two sides. I apologize for that little thing coming out of James' side of the mic. But anyways, so how would I go about doing a MOC that is essentially all desert? Even though this MOC is not all desert, and I can't really give you guys the full gist of how I would go about doing this MOC if it was entirely the tannish brown texture, I would go about not having the figures charging unless they're droids. As you can see here, I have all of my droids charging towards the clones because, as we all know, droids don't have exactly the highest IQ level of all the characters in the Star Wars universe. Not only that, but they're actually going towards something because the clones are actually hiding behind this massive MTT here that's tipped over. I wouldn't suggest having a ship or other debris kind of in really all desert MOCs that you're going to do. I just use this because this is a part of the storyline that I implemented. But the best thing you want to do for a battle situation involving desert terrain is have big enough dunes for some figures to hide behind. Make the scenery realistic. Now, even though this is pretty much one-dimensional and the scenery is entirely flat, I do suggest that if you're going to do a lot of desert MOCs, or if you're going to do a lot of MOCs that are going to be pretty much like this, I would suggest going more two-dimensional, making this thing more making a MOC more elevated than what really what my MOC really looks like at the moment. And actually, I'm going to have James talk to you guys about layering, since that is something he knows quite a bit about.
Okay. It's kind of hard to explain. Basically, they're going to be close-up lights, and I suggest you don't use any curved or wedge pieces that are like angled. If you're going to do a large or even small MOC, just use basic rectangular shapes and square plates. Unless you can do the whole entire MOC with some really exotic sloped angles, which will be very costly, it's not worth it. And a one here, one there is not that great. If you can slope it, a small MOC, the more slope you should have. So if you have a green baseplate MOC, it should be a pretty steep slope or a good amount of layering, just lots of different colors or...
My apologies, guys, for the small interruption. My grandma came in to throw away some trash. But yeah, so James, continue what you were saying about the layering, unless you lost your train of thought.
For a small MOC, which green baseplate, gray baseplate, maybe even 2 gray baseplates, just kind of small size, I suggest you do a lot of layering, lots of like hills or whatever, and just add not just one angle slope, but maybe have like a valley or just a very shallow valley. So yeah.
Right. So that is pretty much all the aspects about layering, and pretty much layering, in my opinion, is the best way to go when you're talking about mountain-like structures and desert-like structures, like as we see here. Now, it's unfortunate that my MOC does not have layering at all to it. I'm not going to lie, it doesn't. But, you know, if I did a lot more layering to this, I think it would have been a lot more realistic to the desert-like feel, instead of having more of a flatland kind of texture, like pretty much, you know, a lot of the traditional Star Wars Battlefront map settings. There's a lot of flatland on some of them. Geonosis is one planet that has a lot of flatland. Although Tatooine is desert, I have seen some flatland on that planet as well. But contributing to what James said, smaller the MOC, the better. Really, guys, when you do a MOC that is big, ideally big, it's a lot harder to pack in detail if you're a detailed person. It takes a lot more time and effort because you have a lot more ground to cover. So really, you know, if you are a detailed person and you're trying to make the scenery be the focal point of the MOC, especially with desert, then go as small as like 1 green base plate if you really want to get the dune texture out. Or if you want to go decently big, I wouldn't suggest doing the 4 base plates like you see here for me, unless you want to go for the flatland texture like I did. The highest I would suggest you would go would be 2 gray base plates, which is pretty much half this MOC right here. So yeah, that is pretty much what we have for you on scenery. Now a little bit more on the battlefield side of things. You want to have more cover so that if you're having 2 forces that are not completely brainless, you want to have like some kind of cover for each of them. Of course, you can't have debris just spread around all around the desert, you know, so of course they're going to have to take cover behind the dunes. So you want to have those small dunes high enough for the clones, or really if you're doing Rebels versus Stormtrooper, or Rebels versus Imperials, or anything in the Star Wars era involving a desert planet, you want to have the dunes high enough for cover and really give that true battle vibe. Because I think not all forces that are going to be in certain MOCs are completely brainless, just like the droids, and like how I have them charging towards the MTT here. They're not just going to, you know, keep going. They're not zombies, you know, like the droids are. They're just not going to keep going straight and not really care and not really try to find any cover. So I would suggest, you know, again, referring back to the layering, keep going forward with that, and just be sure that you have enough cover for the certain forces that you have in your Star Wars MOC, whether that be clones versus droids or stormtroopers versus rebels. Be sure that, you know, it's realistic enough to where it looks nice. It's just a matter of making the battle scene look good. But the battle scene, I keep messing up there, is only half of the MOC. The other half is scenery. Now, if the battle looks good enough, it covers up the scenery if the scenery is crappy. If the scenery is already good enough, then you don't have to emphasize so much on the battlefield. me, since I'm so used to emphasizing so much on the battle, that's why I'm giving you guys more tips on the battle section. And since James is more of the landscape texture guy, that's why I have him guest starring in this episode. So really, I'm just going to go over the high points, and then we're going to cut out this video.
Could I say something real quick?
Go ahead.
Most of you probably watching this are not going to be building huge MOCs, but I've gotten complaints about how some of my MOCs are small, but there's a reason for that. To make a very large MOC,
You have to make it very detailed as well.
with layering is very, very costly.
Costly and difficult and time consuming, if I'm correct.
So don't attempt something big unless you have a lot of money.
And a lot of time on your hands. That, and or if you have a lot of help as well. That also helps. But yes.
Unless they're going to be one-person builders.
Right, yeah. So if you're a one-person builder, I wouldn't suggest doing the layering technique all on your own unless you have a lot of free time on your hands. But if you have like deadlines to meet, like for a contest or something, I wouldn't suggest doing a layering type of scenery, if you have a deadline, especially unless the deadline's like a couple of months. But yeah, like James said, it gets costly and it gets tiring, and it just gets a little bit more difficult if the scenery is like this. I'm pretty sure if I had layering to this, it would have taken me up until now to finish it if I started it back in June. So yes, guys, key points when you're doing a desert MOC scenery. You want to have not too many figures. I mainly suggest that because it's going to look too Civil War-like, where they're just standing around and then they charge towards each other. It's not too much of a realistic kind of battling. If you want to have it more to today's style of fighting, I would suggest having a small amount of figures. I'd say overall at least at bare max only 50, at bare minimum 30, depending on how wide or how I shouldn't say how wide and how long the scenery is. Luckily for me, I had enough figures in here to compensate for that, but don't always make your MOCs flat like this. The smaller the better. And whenever you're doing, keep in mind, whenever you're doing layering for any scenery, whether that be evergreen, grassland or desert or kind of the rocky-ish mountain texture, you want to be sure that the layering looks good enough and looks realistic to the scenery that you're trying to fit it in, whatever planet that may be. And probably the last high point I would say with desert MOCs is just really make everything fit the battlefield. Make your storyline clear, make the scenery look nice, and make the battlefield look nice. Same as any MOC, but with desert MOCs there's not that much you can do, so you really want to emphasize more on the layering when it comes to desert MOCs. So that is pretty much it. Unfortunately, I couldn't have a better example for you guys. Perhaps if I do another desert MOC episode later on in the year with a better kind of MOC scenery, I will revisit this kind of revisit this session about those kinds of MOCs. But for now, that's all me and James have to tell you about making desert MOCs. And I will have the high points. Sorry for another cutoff, guys, but anyways, last thing I want to say, go sub to James. He just got third in David's contest, or Solid Brick Studios contest. He is a great MOC builder, and I hope that I can have him in another one of these MOCTips episodes again so far. So, if I ever revisit desert MOCs, it will not be on this flatland texture that Jaguada has. James, I thank you for guest starring in this video, and next MOCTips episode, we will have perhaps one of the other better builders I have been talking to. We will have Commander Bly 606 on the next episode, and you guys will just have to wait and see what scenery we'll have for you guys next time. So, I'm Nico from Misery Productions, and that's James from James Universe, and thank you guys for watching. We will see you guys in the next MOCTips episode.